Most people think collapse happens because of lack of resources. No food, no space, no survival. But what if I told you that a society can collapse even when everything is perfectly available? No hunger, no predators, no disease, no struggle. In fact, too much comfort might be the real danger. In the late 1960s, a scientist decided to test something that sounded almost utopian. He built a perfect world for mice, a place where nothing could go wrong. Food would never run out, water would flow endlessly, temperature would always stay ideal, no enemies, no threats, no survival pressure at all. Then he introduced just 8 mice into this environment. 4 males, 4 females, and he simply waited. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The mice explored their new world carefully, cautiously, like any species would. They found food easily, they reproduced, they adapted. Life looked successful. Very successful, actually. Every few weeks, the population doubled. 8 became 16, 16 became 32, 32 became over 100. Everything was working exactly as expected. Or so it seemed. Because something strange started to happen. Something that had nothing to do with food or space. Even though there was more than enough room for everyone, the mice started clustering into tight, crowded groups. Other areas of the enclosure remained completely empty. It didn't make logical sense, but it wasn't about space anymore. It was about structure. In every natural society, whether human or animal, survival is not just physical, it is social. There are roles, a hierarchy, a system, a place for each individual to belong. But as the population grew beyond a certain point, those roles began to disappear. Everything that could be done was already being done. And for the new generation, there was no clear identity left, no role to step into, no purpose to fulfill. And that's when behavior started to break. Aggression appeared without reason. Males began attacking each other unpredictably, not for territory, not for food, but almost as if the violence itself had lost meaning. Females started abandoning maternal behavior. Some stopped caring for their young altogether. Others became unusually aggressive. And the younger mice? They grew up confused. There was no structure to learn from, no social order to copy, no guidance. Just chaos. The society didn't starve, it didn't run out of resources, it simply started to lose itself. Then came a group that the researcher found most disturbing. He called them the beautiful ones. They were physically perfect. Clean fur, no scars, no injuries, no signs of struggle. They ate, they slept, they groomed themselves obsessively. And that was it. They didn't fight. They didn't reproduce, they didn't defend territory, they didn't engage in social interaction. On the outside, they looked healthy, but behaviorally, they were absent from life, as if survival had continued, but meaning had stopped. Eventually, something even more alarming happened. Reproduction slowed, then stopped. Not because food disappeared, not because conditions worsened, but because the social system that drives life forward had collapsed internally. Births dropped to 0, and from that point onward, the decline was slow but irreversible. Population decreased gradually, one by one, until eventually not a single mouse remained. A perfect world ended in complete extinction. No external disaster, no environmental failure, just internal breakdown. Now, here's the question that makes this experiment so uncomfortable. What actually caused the collapse? Most people assume it was overcrowding, or maybe too much comfort, but the researchers' conclusion was far more disturbing. He argued that the real failure began when roles disappeared, when individuals no longer had a place in the system that gave them meaning. Because survival is not just about living, it's about belonging. It's about contribution. It's about being needed. And when a living being no longer feels needed, something inside it shuts down long before the body does. First, purpose dies. Then behavior collapses, and only later the physical end follows. He described it as a two-stage death, the death of meaning followed by the death of life. Now, the uncomfortable part is this. This was not just about mice, because when you look at modern human societies, you start noticing strange similarities. We live in a world of extreme comfort compared to any other point in history. Food is accessible, survival is easier, technology solves problems that killed millions. And yet, something else is rising. Anxiety, depression, loneliness, disconnection. People are more comfortable than ever, but not necessarily more fulfilled. And a strange pattern appears. Many individuals feel like they are watching life instead of living it, consuming instead of creating, existing instead of contributing, not because they are incapable, but because modern systems don't always assign clear roles the way older survival-based societies did. So the question becomes unavoidable. If everything is provided, but meaning is not, what happens next? The answer from this experiment is not destiny. It is a warning. Because unlike mice, humans have something different. We are not limited to physical roles. We can create new ones. We can solve problems that haven't been solved yet. We can invent purpose instead of waiting for it. And that is the one advantage that changes everything. A society does not collapse because it becomes comfortable. It collapses when it stops generating meaning, when people stop feeling necessary, when life stops requiring contribution. So the real question is not about mice in a sealed enclosure decades ago. The real question is much closer. What are you building? What problem are you solving? What role are you creating for yourself that didn't exist before? Because in the end, the most dangerous situation is not scarcity. It is emptiness without purpose. And unlike the mice in that experiment, you still have the ability to choose.